Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging into something really fascinating and, pretty challenging. It's a source that breaks down the super complex and often controversial story of black quarterbacks in the NFL. We're talking about talent, leadership, but also some really persistent roadblocks. So let's just dive right in.
So the source we're looking at kicks things off with this powerful line. The whole argument is that, beneath all the bright lights and the Sunday spectacle, there's something else going on, a historical and persistent issue that really shapes the careers of some of the league's biggest stars. That's a huge claim, right? So let's break down exactly how the author gets there. Okay, so the author presents this really provocative central argument. And to really get it, we've got to start with the main idea it's all built around. Right, so first up, let's get into the plantation mentality argument. To really understand this whole analysis, we have to look at this one specific and, provocative term the author uses to describe the power dynamics they see in the league. It's the concept that really everything else is built on. And here it is, the core concept, the plantation mentality. So what does the source mean by this? Well, they use this term to describe a power structure where you have a white ownership class profiting from a workforce that is majority black. The argument, the big idea here, is that this setup creates this kind of built-in systemic resistance to black athletes taking on roles of, intellectual leadership. And that's especially true for the quarterback spot. And look at the numbers the source uses to illustrate this point. It's pretty striking. It points out that about 70% of the players in the NFL are black, and the majority team owners, 100% white. According to the author, this is the imbalance, the structural reality that sets the stage for all the power dynamics we're going to talk about. Okay, so if that's the structure the author is talking about, how does it actually play out? Like, where do you see it? Well, the source argues that the first clue is in the language itself, in the words used to talk about and evaluate players. So the source points to this really clear pattern, especially in sports media. You'll see white quarterbacks get praised with words that are all about their minds, right? They're cerebral, a pro-style QB, a student of the game. But then, the language for black quarterbacks often shifts to their physical gifts. They're athletic, raw, where they rely on instincts. The whole point the author is making here is that this isn't an accident. It subtly pushes this idea that their success is all about natural talent, not necessarily the smarts or the grind. And to show this isn't just some abstract idea, the source pulls up some really high-profile examples from the NFL draft. I mean, remember Lamar Jackson? Wins the Heisman as a quarterback, and analysts are telling him he should switch to wide receiver. Or what about Cam Newton? He's called immature and too flashy after a monster season. Justin Fields gets his work ethic torn apart despite being an absolute stud in college. The author presents these as exhibits A, B, and C of how black quarterbacks face a totally different level of scrutiny. All right, now we get to what the source calls the ultimate case study for this entire argument, the story of Colin Kaepernick. I mean, just look at the timeline the source lays out. It's pretty stark. In 2013, Kaepernick is starting in the Super Bowl. He's at the top of his game. Then, 2016, he starts his peaceful protest. Fast forward to 2017, he's a free agent. And today, still unsigned by an NFL team. So the conclusion the source draws is pretty clear. His talent was never the question. His exile from the league, they argue, isn't about football. It's a direct result of his activism. And this quote really gets to the heart of the point the author is making with Kaepernick's story. To lead is fine, as long as you don't challenge the system. The argument is that his situation sent a powerful, unwritten message across the league. Sure, you can be a leader, but the moment you challenge the power structure, the moment you speak out on stuff that makes people uncomfortable, that's where the line is drawn. But here's the thing. The analysis doesn't just stop at the problem. It also points out that even with all these challenges, the story is changing. It argues the narrative is being rewritten right now in a powerful way. So, who's doing the rewriting? Well, the source points to this incredible line of players who just absolutely broke the mold. You've got pioneers like Doug Williams, who was the first black quarterback to win it all. You've got game changers like Steve McNair, Donovan McNabb, and Michael Vick. And then you get to today's superstars like Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes. And the new wave, guys like Jalen Hurts and CJ Stroud. The argument here is that they aren't just winning games, they are fundamentally changing what it means to be a quarterback in the NFL.
So to wrap up, the source doesn't just leave us with the problem. It actually lays out a call to action, a way forward. First, call out that coded language when you see it in the media. Second, hold teams accountable on diversity. Third, really recognize and celebrate the intelligence of these quarterbacks. Fourth, push for fairness in how young players are developed. And finally, support players who decide to use their platform and their voice.
And that brings us to the final thought from the source, which really sticks with you. It says, the story of the Black quarterback is at its core a story of resilience. But then it leaves us with this one last big question. Whose job is it to rewrite this narrative for good? Who is really responsible for making that permanent change? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.